If you are watching this video here, then I can honestly say you are destined to be rich. Destined to be rich. And by that it is meant very specifically, I'm from the view that information like this doesn't show up unless you have a desire to know this information. And I can honestly speak from personal experience. So I've built 3 successful businesses. I've been an entrepreneur full-time since 2009. I've generated millions of dollars. Prior to that, I did 10 years of corporate IT. And upon connecting the dots looking backwards, in 2004, I discovered this book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. At that time, I was in $50,000 debt. Now, I did not have a harmonious relationship with money. I did not have a harmonious relationship with money. Although at that time, I was making kind of okay money, I was spending more than I was making. And I was experiencing what we can call a lifestyle creep. Essentially what that means is, and it's based on conditioning, programming in the subconscious mind, inharmonious relationship with money-based programming in the subconscious mind. I thought that if I make more money, I need to spend that money and spend more of that money that I didn't have, through credit cards, taking out loans, etc. Now, I can honestly say that's not my natural way. I just thought that this is the way, or that was the way to live. And why? Because I wasn't really thinking for myself. I was thinking based on programming or conditioning. In other words, at a particular point in my life, I was looking around to see how other people were dealing with money. And then I was just mimicking their behaviors. And a bunch of these behaviors were not my natural style. They're not based on how I really am. They were based on programming. They were based on conditioning. So in the book, he said that if you have a definite chief aim, then some way, somehow, and I may not know how, the vision manifests. And then what I also discovered was that along the way, so I got out of $50,000 debt. It showed up in unexpected ways, in ways that I didn't know. What I also realized was I was identified with particular programming. And this programming was generating all these kinds of experiences, which we can define them as inharmonious relationship with money. So what I did was I brought awareness to this programming, which is stored in the subconscious mind, which was apparent based on the thoughts that were appearing in my mind, which I could choose to identify with or not. How I was emotionally relating to different concepts surrounding money, and also behaviors. So as mentioned, the lifestyle creep behavior. And I was incurring debt, and there was a lot of interest on that debt as well. So what happened one time when I was in corporate, someone actually slashed my tires. I don't know why. I have no idea. Maybe someone I annoyed back in the days or whatever, but it actually happened. The 2 tires got slashed. And I did not have money available to pay for those 2 tires in my bank account. And when I looked at my credit cards, I saw that I had just enough money on my credit cards to pay for those, or just as much credit on my credit card to pay for those 2 tires. And then I didn't have any money. So to me, that was a blessing in disguise. Because what happened was I realized that, you know what? That's not the way that I want to live. I do not want to live like this. I do not want to be in credit card debt, and I do not want to have no money in my bank account. I do not want to live paycheck to paycheck. I do not want to spend whatever money is coming in and then some with credit cards. I do not want to apply for additional room on my credit card. This is not my natural style of living. So what happened was I committed to a vision, and the vision was to have $25,000 in my bank account, exactly like Napoleon Hill had articulated in Think and Grow Rich, which is called the Definite Chief Aim. And what happened was I ended up getting out of debt and having $25,000 in my bank account, which ended up being a down payment that I used to buy my first house. So along the way, what happened was my relationship to money transformed. Not only did I get out of $50,000 debt, my relationship with money transformed. And so I ended up applying the information in Think and Grow Rich to move up in my corporate career, make more money, save more money. As mentioned, I bought my first house. And I ended up leaving corporate in 2009 and starting an IT business. I did 10 years in corporate IT. And I built that IT business to success. I ran it from 2009 to 13. And I never got back into debt. As a matter of fact, I started putting money aside and I started investing that money. And then when I moved into business consulting in 2013, because I realized that what I wanted to do next for the next phase of my life was I did not want to do any more IT services. I wanted to be a business consultant, and I wanted to consult based on my personal experience of building my IT business to success. So the way I segment entrepreneurship is as follows: innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, and leadership. So I wanted to go out and teach that to entrepreneurs and also build a consulting practice, so another business. And then what I also started doing at that time was I started making YouTube videos. Not on this channel here, my other channel, which I have built to over 400,000 subscribers organically by making videos. And I've been making videos since 2013. My first video was living out of a backpack and my transition from my IT business and buying a one-way ticket to Austria, minimizing my possessions, fitting everything into a backpack, and going over to Austria for the next phase. Now, I never got back into debt, and I actually don't have a problem with leveraging debt. Like, for example, you could take a loan out and you can invest that money and get multiple returns on that investment, or get whatever kind of returns on that investment that is greater than the interest that you're paying, and thus profit off that. So I don't have a problem, but that's not my style of doing things. My style of doing things is as follows. I like to generate a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Number two, at the same time, I like to enjoy a wonderful lifestyle, whatever I personally consider to be a wonderful lifestyle. So this is where I do not identify with those beliefs that suggest if you make more money, then you need to spend more money. You need to buy a more expensive car, or you need to spend more money on more expensive clothes, or upgrade your house, upgrade your lifestyle. That might be for another person, but that is not for me. Yes, I do enjoy that money, and over the years, I have upgraded my lifestyle. For example, in 2013, I mentioned I bought a one-way ticket to Austria, and I was traveling and running my business from 2013 to 18, building my YouTube channel and also getting involved with business consulting, growing that as well. And over the years, I've generated millions of dollars while having my style of wonderful lifestyle. So I don't look around to see what other people are doing and say, I need to do that. I don't look around and say, oh, this person has this other car. Therefore, based on insecurity, I need to buy another car to one-up them, etc. I don't think like that. That kind of thinking maybe back in the days, which was based on conditioning, programming. So one of the greatest benefits that I've experienced on this journey was mind purification, clearing the subconscious mind from these beliefs that distort my natural style of living. So as mentioned, lavish, steady, dependable income, consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Number 2, wonderful lifestyle. And that wonderful lifestyle doesn't actually cost that much. And I've even done things that one could say could be more costly, but the way I went about doing it, I got to enjoy those experiences. Like, for example, I lived in California, Redondo Beach, California, in 2017 and 18 on a TN visa. For a number of months, I rented a Porsche, and that was business expense. Meals were covered, lodging was covered, and it was all legitimate business expense. Now, my accountant knows the details, so I don't know if it was 100% or whatever, but she took care of all that. But I can honestly say a good fair amount of that was allowed to be expensed. It was legitimate business expense. So I got to enjoy it. Now, number 3, as a result of making really good money, over the years, I've put money aside and I have invested it. I have invested it in real estate, and I have invested it in index funds. I have invested it in stocks. Stocks that I'm very familiar in. Tech stocks, because I have a background in tech. And I love tech. I'm a fan of tech. So that's where I can make a lot of intuitive moves and based on personal experience in the stock market. So while keeping these 3 things into consideration, what has happened, and this is what I also want to talk about, built on the video that I released last week. If you haven't seen it, I'll link in the description to it, where I talk about product life cycle. Product life cycle. See, what I've realized in entrepreneurship, and I mentioned this in that video, and I would like to further expand upon this in a way so that ideally, what I personally recommend for everyone is they build wealth while doing what they love to do, not just in business, not just in career, but also enjoy a wonderful lifestyle and build wealth so that if products do go through the product life cycle and they start to decline, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I recommend watching that video. Products get introduced and go through a cycle where they may decline. Some life cycles are longer. They may last multi-generational, decades. Some of them last weeks. The same is true for content creation. And I've been a content creator since 2013, and I've seen a lot of things. And in consulting, I've consulted with thousands of businesses. A number of them have been content creators as well. And we've seen cycles for what is trending. And if they have not kept product life cycle into consideration, one of the things that I have seen is while they were making that money, so they were able to go in on a particular angle in the market, or they had a particular position, or they were talking about a trending topic, and it resulted in a whole bunch of product sales or sales of their services or ad revenue. Then what happened is, let's say the market shift. The interest wasn't there for that particular topic, or the way they were articulating it wasn't appealing anymore. That particular market was satisfied with it or shifted or whatever. We can get into nuances about that if you'd like. You could leave a comment in the comment section. We can explore. And during that time, while they were growing, they were making good money, and they were spending it all. And they were spending more than they were making as well. And they thought that it was going to last forever. And as mentioned, some product life cycles are longer, some are weeks, some are months, some are years. And that is completely normal. That is normal. As an entrepreneur, I recommend being aware of how entrepreneurs operate who are successful, and also the various principles of entrepreneurship, including product life cycle. So, if they had put money aside, followed what I had mentioned, make really good money, which they're making really good money, enjoy a wonderful lifestyle, without getting involved with lifestyle creep, they would have put money aside, they would have invested that money, and let's just say all of a sudden there isn't a demand for that kind of content they're making, or the products and services are not selling as well as they once did. That is completely normal and fine, and that would not trouble them. What would happen, and this is what I teach, is maybe not necessarily just in the growth stage. I like to actually have number of ideas in the pipeline, not in an overwhelming way, a number of ideas in the pipeline, and roll out with them so that if there is a cash cow, if there's one thing that's generating a lot of money, or a few things that are generating a lot of money, if that starts to decline, the other ones start to pick up. But let's say they didn't have that, and they just relied upon that one income stream, whether it be ads or whatever it may be, and then it started to decline, and they spent the money. And I've talked to a number of individuals that were in this category, and why I'm making this video is to share what I shared with them based on experience, and also share with you so you don't end up in that kind of situation. If they had put the money aside and invested it, what would happen is when there's a decline, they would have money to take care of their living expenses while they look for another opportunity and still remain in entrepreneurship. A number of them ended up going back to work, and nothing wrong with that. Some of them actually came to the realization that entrepreneurship is not for them, which is completely normal. Some of them said, okay, I'll go back to work for a while, put some money aside, and the next time we'll go into it, they'll apply what I'm sharing with you, which is, again, we want to consider, ideally, generating a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Number two, enjoying a wonderful lifestyle. And, your lifestyle, your wonderful lifestyle, is your style. Generally, what I've found, and going back through my own personal experiences back in the days, is keeping up with the Joneses or lifestyle creep or any kind of conditioning which was generating inharmonious relationship with money resulted in excessive spending and not keeping track of the finances. As a matter of fact, one of the things that happened when I was getting out of $50,000 debt back in the days is I actually started to enjoy financial planning, budgeting. Now, if I say these kinds of words, a person may be triggered by them. And that's just conditioning that's being triggered to be released. It doesn't mean that you have to do these things to a high degree like a financial planner. It may mean that it's helpful to bring on a financial planner or someone that is an expert in this area who can help you, or have conversations with people, join masterminds, or watch videos on these kinds of topics so that you could do it your style without neglecting the finance area of your business. As mentioned, the areas of entrepreneurship: innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, and leadership. And while you might not focus exclusively on one of these areas, it is helpful to not neglect them. To have people on your team, or to have a business partner, or somehow there's many kinds of configurations that I've seen. Typically what I've seen is you can learn how to do it up to a particular level, and then anything more than that, you can bring someone on to help you. ChatGPT is very helpful nowadays. I never had ChatGPT back in the days. You can hire someone, you can delegate, you can do partnership arrangements. And I personally recommend not neglecting it. Now, this is one of the things that I did in the earlier stages. So when I got into entrepreneurship, I had this foundation. While I was building my IT business, I kept that in consideration. Then when I moved into my YouTube channel, and then when I did business consulting, I kept that into consideration as well. That there are product life cycles, and it's not just product life cycles for products or services, but particular topics. Let's say someone is creating content for their marketing, that is to be kept into consideration. And through diversification of having different products and services, different angles, different positions, it does not necessarily mean you need to get involved with a new niche, although that can be something. It can mean that you have different ways of testing if sales are declining and you don't feel troubled by it. You don't feel troubled by the declining numbers. You're like, okay, this is normal. So as mentioned, some of them go back to work and say, I don't want to do entrepreneurship, and that's completely fine, but they gain a whole bunch of newfound insight and they take that into their career and they excel in their career. Some may come back again as entrepreneurs now, having learned this and build up that foundation, what we're talking about here. So I recommend keeping all three of these into consideration. And also consider as well what I discussed recently, and we've explored this quite extensively, the 5 stages of awareness, inspired by the wonderful book Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. Because that allows you to tap into new market segments. Let's just say the positioning or the marketing, the angle or the packaging of whatever product or service has been saturated, or for whatever the reason may be, saturated in the market, or for whatever the reason may be, is declining. It might not actually be saturated in the market if we adjust our positioning. So I'll give an example. I have a subconscious mind program. I created the subconscious mind program back in 2018. When I first created that program, I created it primarily for entrepreneurs. But I used the subconscious mind program, the information that I put in the subconscious mind program, and a bunch of it was inspired by Think and Grow Rich, the subconscious mind chapter, auto suggestions, etc. I took that information and applied it to different areas of my life. So it wasn't just money, it was relationships, it was fitness, it was different areas of my life, family, friends, and it works. But if you go onto my website, I'll link in the description to it, Online Training for Entrepreneurs, many people assume, and that's fine, it's set up that way, many people assume that it's just for entrepreneurs. But every now and then, people will say, they'll reach out to me, or they'll buy it, and they'll apply it for a different area, and they'll tell me about the results that they've got. Or they'll inquire about it. They'll email or DM me and say, does it apply for relationships? And I say, yes. And so what I did later on was I created another version, added a workbook, included more examples and nuances from applying this for myself over the course of a number of years since I created version 1, but also the coaching and consulting that I did in that area. I created another version and I made it more general. Now, I can offer that to entrepreneurs, and I have been for many years, and it's very effective. It's a very strong position. How to program your subconscious mind for success for entrepreneurs. But I can also do that, and I can even rename it to something that is not even the kind of lingo that entrepreneurs use, but it's a different kind of lingo in relationship niches, etc. and maybe just adjust some of the things in the program because the information is still solid. It still works, and target that particular niche with my same program. So even if there was a product life cycle for that has been maxed out, which from my experience has not, because every day I work with entrepreneurs in that area and that just keeps going. I could, if I want to, target that same program to different audiences. Now, interestingly, I've shared this with entrepreneurs in the earlier stages. Some of them applied it, some of them did not. The ones that did not eventually come to the same realization, and maybe they go into debt, maybe their first business closes, etc. No shame, no condemnation. But they come back to this, what we're talking about here. Because this is all built on experience. This is all built on experience. So I could position it and adjust it, but I find that people constantly reach out to me for subconscious mind related work with respect to entrepreneurship, with respect to money. It's an area that I have a lot of experience with. Now, let's just say, for whatever the reason may be, the world, everyone knows this stuff. Either they learned it through my program or they learned it somewhere else and they got it working. What would happen? Well, I had put money aside. I have invested exactly like how I teach. Then if I wanted to make more money, because one of the benefits is when you have a lavish, steady, dependable income and you put money aside, the investments grow and the return you get on investments, dividends, etc. is greater than your monthly income. So at that point, you can choose to work or not. It's up to you. But let's just say you choose to have another business or choose to continue with your career. What happens is if, let's say, AI or something comes along or market shifts, product life cycle as mentioned, something shifts, that's okay. That's normal. Completely normal. You have buffer. You have space. And you'll just go into a new business. You'll just invest perhaps in starting a new business, or you'll become an angel investor and invest in entrepreneurs, or you'll just stick with investing. And that'll be your business. Maybe if you were doing content creation and your primary source of leads was through social media or writing blog posts or Substack posts or whatever, making videos, you'll test out some ads. I had some clients that did that and then succeeded in ads. They were very good at creating organic content, and then they diversified. They said, okay, paid advertising is something that I can get into while the revenue is being generated from the offers that they have. Paid advertising is something that I can get into, so I could develop that skill. And they start converting on their offers. And now they don't need to rely upon organic traffic. So a person can say, you know what? Product life cycle based on organic traffic. And that's a nuance point. The market is not really saturated. It can be communicated differently. We can communicate with people differently. And we can apply the 5 stages of awareness. Again, watch that video. May educate them. They may be aware of the problem that they have. They might not be, remember the unaware? They might not be aware of the problem that they have. You know, this one is an easy one for me. And what I mean by it's an easy one for me is entrepreneurs. And this is true for relationships. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to start coaching or consulting in this area, it's a great opportunity. There's a number of members of Flow-Based Prosperity that offer it, and they're getting clients because there's so much opportunity in this area. Entrepreneurs, let's use this example. There's a number of entrepreneurs that I have met that assume that the journey of entrepreneurship is stress and force-based. It needs to be stress and force-based. It needs to be frustrating. And not the good kind of stress where stimulating, like Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi talks about in the book Flow, where challenge meets skill. But the suffering, as the Buddha referred to, the suffering, they think the suffering is normal for entrepreneurship. And so what happens then is we have a conversation and we bring awareness to what we call a problem which they are not aware of. By that it is meant they were acting unconsciously. You know, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it directs you and you call it fate or something like that. So that's what they're doing. I'm saying, oh, it's just like that. Entrepreneurship is stress and force-based, and it's very grueling and this and that. And I said, okay, you know, it's one thing to hear somebody say that, no, it can be flow-based, it can be fun, it could be joyous, and they have not built a business and they have never done it. And I understand that could sound like a bunch of conjecture. That theory could sound nice on the surface, but it might not actually be valid. But I can have a heart-to-heart conversation with them about my own personal experiences, like I do on this channel, like I do with my other channel, and also when I do sales presentations, etc. And I talk about my experiences, and I say, yes, I have done it in a stress force-based way, so that is valid. Flow. Now I do it in a fun, joyous, flow-based way. Now I have fun. And it started in 2017 when I made flow a priority. Before I was kind of in flow. Some other times I was not in flow. And it's one thing for me to say to you, just make flow a priority. But I have discovered all kinds, thousands and thousands and thousands of potential flow restrictors and how to transmute those flow restrictors into flow enhancers. And I've done this with myself. And I've done this with thousands of people. And I've done it in different areas of life as well. And they say, let's run this for a test spin. I'll sign up for your coaching for 5 sessions or something like that. And it works. And they were, in the earlier stages, unaware. And, you know, then there's problem aware and so forth. We can talk about that, but that's outside of the scope of today's video. If you're interested in that video that I created gets into the 5 stages of awareness. Eugene Schwartz. So in the video that I released last week, I had mentioned that skill is as important as beliefs. Some might say, no, beliefs are more important than skill, or skill is more important than beliefs. I don't think this verse is that. I always say the answer is it depends. So skill cultivation, or as I talk about using the Robert Dilts logical levels, which I'll pull up on my screen while I'm driving. And by the way, if you want a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. I am not mind mapping, obviously, while I'm driving. You see my hands in the steering wheel, the eyes on the road, etc., fully focused. But I can share from my heart exactly what I've been experiencing and talking about it. I find that car-based, flow-based conversations, we can call it that, flow, quite natural and effortless for me. And then later on, what I do is I mind map these. So I'll pull up the Robert Dilts logical levels, and I have modified it by placing the I on the top. That I represents you, that pure awareness, real nature, being, complete fulfillment. I am that pure awareness, complete fulfillment, consciousness, bliss, or Vedics refer to it as Satchit Ananda. That is you. Now you have a vision. And all those other layers transform. And part of the vision is skill cultivation. You see, under capabilities, that layer of the Robert Dilts logical level, skill cultivation. So some people are like, hey, beliefs are more important than skills. Skills are more important than beliefs. The answer is it depends. And I honestly speak from personal experience of working with thousands of entrepreneurs, including myself. At times, we don't need to go digging for more beliefs, limiting beliefs. And that could sound like a never-ending quest to go and search for limiting beliefs and remove limiting beliefs. that entrepreneur can benefit from some skill cultivation. Because they said to me sometimes, and I thought this as well, I thought, oh, I got to work on my beliefs. And then I met someone that said, are you really sure about that? Seems to me you got to learn some direct response marketing, consultative selling, or copywriting. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Makes sense. Makes sense. I don't have limiting beliefs in that area. Now, for another person, if I say consultative selling, copywriting, direct response marketing, they may be triggered. Okay, awareness is brought to beliefs, dissolve identification. What's the trigger? Why is it that if I say those words, direct response marketing, consultative selling, or copywriting, or if I bring up product life cycle, or if I bring up Eugene Schwartz 5 stages of awareness, do you seem to be triggered by that? No shame, no condemnation. In that context, let's dissolve that belief so you could see these things clearly and apply them your way. Because maybe you think, based on that condition, that product life cycle means something that it actually does not in a way that's helpful for you. Like how we're talking about here. Or the 5 stages of awareness means something in a way that's not helpful for you, like the way we're talking about here. Or any kind of thing in relation to entrepreneurship. Sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership. So the answer is it depends. With some individual, we cultivate the skills. With some individuals, we get involved with what we talk about in the subconscious mind program. Sometimes it's both. The answer is depends. So that's why skills are important and beliefs are important. Both are important. Both are important. Now, as mentioned, you have that pure awareness, which is prior to beliefs, prior to skill. You can see in the Robert Dills logical levels. Prior to, beyond, I am that pure awareness, prior to the vision that I have. The personal identity, which is transforming to reflect the vision. The values and beliefs, which can be transformed through the subconscious mind program, for example, including the identity can be transformed. Lump them together if you'd like. Identity is made up, personal identity, not true identity, which is that I am presence beyond the personal identity. That true identity is perfection. The personal identity is evolving to a higher version. Or another way of saying it is you are always evolving to a higher version of yourself. And entrepreneurship and all these things we're talking about are spiritual catalysts. So there's no faking or pretending or spiritual bypassing here. And for any of that kind of stuff, I recommend the video that I did on the Kelly and Connor emotional cycle of change, so that it can be all congruent, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, fundamentally as it is, not through mental distortion. So I'm going to link in the description to that video as well. The answer is depends. Beliefs are important, skills are important. It's important to consider both these areas. And freestyle, it's really like that. Freestyle, and I do coaching or consulting with entrepreneurs. We work on whatever shows up. Whatever shows up. If it's a skill thing, we take care of it. If it's a belief thing, we take care of it. If it's both, we take care of it. So in this video, we got into a bunch of nuances in relation to product life cycle. We got into some nuances in relation to the 5 stages of awareness, Eugene Schwartz. We also talked about how I mentioned what I had found along the way, which has been very helpful for entrepreneurs, and that's why I teach it that way, is keeping all 3 of those areas into consideration. Number 1, generating a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Number 2, enjoying a wonderful lifestyle. And if you want to get into some coaching and consulting with respect to these 2 areas, I'll link in the description to my contact form and you can get in touch with me. And also to consider number 3, invest for long-term wealth and a harmonious future. If all of these are kept into consideration, if all of these, and if a person says, oh, it's hard to keep all of these in consideration, That's a belief. Why is it hard? One individual finds it easy to keep it all in consideration. Another individual finds it hard to keep it all into consideration. No shame, no condemnation. That is just based on belief. So we dissolve that belief. If an individual does not dissolve that belief, as I mentioned, they'll just let the programming in the subconscious mind control them, and they'll call it fate. And they might say, you know what, it's just not for me. The answer is depends. Entrepreneurship may or may not be for you. The answer is depends. Why does a person have to be an entrepreneur? Well, maybe a person looks around and they see other entrepreneurs. Maybe they're watching videos on YouTube or TikTok, and they're watching the lives of entrepreneurs, and they're not really thinking for themselves. No shame, no condemnation. By that it is meant, based on conditioning, they're saying, I need to do what this person is doing in order to be happy, which is an illusion. By that it is meant, happiness is not based on an outcome. Happiness is now. To prove the point, if you get to that point, let's say you genuinely desire to experience that, you genuinely desire. When you get to that point where you have whatever income that you're aiming for, monthly income, you're going to experience happiness with that money in the bank account, not because the money in the bank account. So you're going to experience happiness there, which is still now at that particular point now. When you imagine yourself being in possession of that money, like was articulated in Think and Grow Rich, which leaves an impression on the subconscious mind and orients the body toward that end. Acceptance of the end wills the means. You experience happiness now, or fulfillment now. Along the way, each step along the way, like for example, we're driving, I'm enjoying this conversation with you. I have a wonderful time. And I do this wonderful time having all the time, while working out, while having conversations with clients, while doing whatever in relation to entrepreneurship, in particular areas that are indirectly related to entrepreneurship. That's because fulfillment or happiness is now. It's not based on a condition or not based on an outcome. It only seems like it is based on an outcome, based on mental programming. And if identified with this mental programming, and this is what I work with entrepreneurs on as well, and again, I've done this with relationships, I've done it with myself on different areas. If a person thinks that happiness is experienced only when they get to that point, because absolutely, when you get to that point, of course, you're going to experience happiness. But that's a nuanced point. I'm going to get into that in a moment. What I mean by the answer is depends, even over there. You experience happiness there. But why can't you experience happiness now and in relation to or with the various tasks, projects, initiatives along the way? Why? Because the individual is unknowingly identified with, or maybe they know, with whatever kind of conditioning that's generating the stress, the frustration, the suffering, essentially. They're identified with that conditioning. Now, if they dissolve that conditioning, they'll experience that fulfillment along the way. They'll experience fulfillment or happiness with the initiatives. They'll be in flow, essentially. They'll be in flow along the way. Now, that nuance point that I brought up, let's say a person gets to that point where they have that X amount of dollars in their bank account. They might experience happiness for a moment, or they might not. They might have thought that, oh, happiness is when I get to that point. They get to that point, which is now, as the only moment that we really know is now. They get to that point, and what happens is they feel unfulfilled. So then they might say, I want to make more money, because they think that if I make more money, then I could be fulfilled, and the cycle repeats itself. Or they get the car and they say, I want the next car, the next car. They're looking around to see what other people are doing, and they want to do what other people are doing because they think that that is the source of happiness. That is not true. You are that source of happiness now. Come on now. The source of happiness is within. Now. That is how it is. So, a person may look on the internet, watch videos like this, and I'm not suggesting you need to be an entrepreneur. There are many ways to generate a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. And or if you do desire to be an entrepreneur, doesn't mean you have to do it my style. There are many styles we could explore. And certainly I plan on exploring many different ways on this channel from personal experience and those that I've worked with. So maybe a person sees an entrepreneur living and they think, I got to be an entrepreneur. So they get involved with entrepreneurship and they find out it's not for them. And they might think there's something wrong with them. But there's nothing wrong with them. This is why I always teach, really think for yourself. Get to the heart of what's going on. So if you watch videos and you're inspired by people, a great question to ask is, what is my version of that? What are they implying? What are they implying? They're essentially implying that their style is the best style, and you acknowledge that, and your style is the best style. That's what I found. What I can honestly say is every one of my visions have been steps out of my comfort zone. That I can honestly say. There has been moments where I can call it controlled chaos, where I place myself in situations because I know it's related to my vision, and it can feel very uncomfortable, but I have the mental tools, like what I talk about in my subconscious mind program, like what I talk about on my other channel, to be able to soften any kind of blows psychologically, emotionally release, etc. And then grow as an individual, physically, emotionally, mentally. Or another way of saying it is I become more as I am through all these spiritual catalysts. So public speaking was one of them. And at times it felt like controlled chaos. There was uncertainty, there was doubt, but I kept going. Now I did that in an ideal ratio. The rest of the time, it's mostly flow. And flow is not just while things are, you're coasting, for example. Like right now, it's so easy to talk and make these videos. It's just so easy. There's absolutely no challenge. But back in the days, there was challenge to make these videos, and that's okay. So this has become easy and effortless, and I could just keep talking. As a matter of fact, we've been talking for an hour, and we're going to continue talking. I've got an hour and 15 minutes left on my drive. I'm driving from Blue Mountains to Toronto and stay there for the weekend, and I'll drive back. Had wonderful snowboarding sessions this week and more to come next week. So what I mean is that flow is where challenge meets skill, and also flow can be where there's no challenge. And it's all perceived. The challenge is perceived. So in particular situations, I don't run away from the challenge. I know it's related to my vision, whatever task, project, or initiative. I know it's related to my vision, and I don't run away from it. I just take the steps. As a matter of fact, I have made it a habit. So I'll link in the description to a video that I released on my other channel where I discuss some components from 2 wonderful books, and I relate this all together, habit forming. Because habits is part of it, or you see the Robert Dill's logical levels, capabilities can be part of the vision. And the 2 books, Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg and Atomic Habits by James Clear, have been very helpful. The habit loops that they have in there. So if you take that and you apply it, what happens is you experience flow. And if you go about it in a flow-based way, I recommend combining it with the wonderful book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. If you go about it in a flow-based way, not only will there be emotional release, emotional regulation, nervous system regulation, mind purification, neurological changes, you'll experience that Ananda bliss. Literally, Ananda mind is released and it binds to CB1 receptors and you experience bliss. And it binds to CB2 receptors and you experience bliss. So, you get those benefits, you get the neurological benefits, you feel bliss by stepping into the flow through challenge. I don't run away from the challenge, because that would imply spiritual bypassing, using spiritual concepts to say, okay, I am that pure awareness. But meanwhile, there's a challenge in front of me, I am that pure awareness with this challenge as well. I can be that pure awareness. I am that pure awareness with this challenge. I can experience these emotions. I can let them be. They can release. I can do these things that are related to my vision. And what happens is I dissolve that conditioning and experience that bliss with these things. That's why I refer to that as the G spot, the God spot, where challenge meets skill. Vijay Csikszentmihalyi's wonderful book, Flow. I love that book. So yes, what happens is you end up step by step cultivating skills, transforming the beliefs. You succeed as an entrepreneur. If it's your thing, you're not succeeding as an entrepreneur, as in you don't stay an entrepreneur for 10, 20 years or whatever, or lifetime, that's okay. You still succeed. Because there has been, as I met, a number of entrepreneurs that said that was a great journey. I did it for a while, and I have chosen to move on into the next phase. Like, for example, I snowboard. And there's a number of friends that I had growing up. They were snowboarding growing up, and a number of friends were skateboarders growing up, but they stopped skateboarding. And they're not like, I wish I could skateboard, or I would like to skateboard. If they did, they would do it. There are people that continue to snowboard. My next door neighbor, for example, he's been snowboarding since he was a kid. Continues to snowboard. So the answer is always it depends. Listen to yourself and trust yourself. You know yourself. Be yourself. That's all my teachings are, is be yourself. And if it happens to be entrepreneurship, then here, we've got a lot of resources available. We've got a lot of discussions. And just being an entrepreneur for 17 years, I've seen a lot of things. 3 businesses, working with thousands of people. And whenever I come across entrepreneurship content or entrepreneurship information, and I trust you notice in your level of mastery in whatever area, once you've achieved mastery in whatever area, you'll see there's so much nuance to it. But the answer is it depends. The answer is it depends. So as I mentioned, answer is it depends. It could be a skill thing, it could be a belief thing. But one of the things that I found to be very helpful is to consider all 3 of those areas. Generating a lavish, steady, dependable income, consistent with integrity and mutual benefit, while enjoying a wonderful lifestyle, your style. You can really think for yourself in this regard, just as you can really think for yourself as to the kind of business you're involved with, your business model, and then also invest long-term wealth and a harmonious future. Now, when it comes to learning entrepreneurship and preventing some of those things that I had mentioned in the earlier stages, where a person gets involved with something, they start making a lot of money, and the money from that particular revenue source dwindles, acknowledge God is supply. God is supply. That means release identification or attachment to that money-making initiative or that revenue stream in the moment, and trust that there is another one. There's another one. As a matter of fact, there's so many of them. How many products are entering the earlier stages of the product lifecycle right now? How many new emerging trends are there? You never run out of opportunities, I can assure you. Person may think, oh, I didn't jump on it soon enough, now I missed out, fear of missing out. And so they'll rush into do things based on conditioning of fear of missing out. There's all kinds of opportunities. What I found is I just cultivate my skills. I just continue the mind purification. I continue to do the things that I genuinely love to do. The skills are refined. Back in the days, I would consume information like this, talking about these various business concepts. If I was triggered by them, I would release the programming. And then I would understand how helpful what they were saying actually was and how it applies to my particular life. Like, what is my way of applying this information? And I would apply it at the right time, might not be right away, and I'd produce results. And then what would happen is more opportunities would emerge. So some products would go through their life cycle, and I maybe kicked off a bunch of new product ideas, launched them out, version 1, etc., earlier stages of the product life cycle. I may be involved with some marketing, and I might be communicating more so to the unaware. bringing them into aware, and maybe even then all of a sudden, a lot of people are now aware and then go into product aware, etc., the different stages. And if one revenue stream dwindles or dries up, that's okay. I'll pivot into another one. Because I value product lifecycle. See that? So learning that allowed me to be at peace as an entrepreneur. If you are experiencing a surge of revenue, if you are experiencing, like right now, money's rolling in, or if you have channels and your videos are getting a lot of views, etc., and it's generating a lot of leads and sales, etc., consider, as the money is rolling in, put money aside, invest some of it. Yeah, still enjoy a wonderful lifestyle, ideal ratio. Put some of it aside, and then, you know what, thank me later. You can say, wow, I am glad I did that. I'm glad I did that. Because, hey, some product life cycles could be a long time. You can pivot. There's nuances, as mentioned. But let's just say if there is fluctuations, even with investments, for example. Like right now, I live in Ontario. The real estate market, the value of property has been going down. Some individuals are having a hard time with that, and that's understandable. Some individuals are okay with it, at peace with it, not making any reactive decisions, which is what I ideally recommend. But to think clearly, really think for yourself. And these individuals, and I've spoken to some of them, they can honestly say that they feel that way because, and you can, even if you don't have money in your bank account, still be at peace. Absolutely. Yet what they tell me is it's easier for them to be at peace because they have other investments or the revenue stream, or they put money aside and they're okay to ride it out. And that's why thinking critically and thinking this way, what Napoleon Hill called accurate thinking, is very helpful. I like to look at things from various different angles. And so one of the reasons why I also teach this and talk about this is whenever you're consuming any information, consider it's all opinions. Like, this is all opinions here. What I'm sharing is my opinions. Yes, I'm sharing it based on personal experience. And you can really tune in and say, what is helpful? The rest you can put aside. And maybe you'll come back to it later on. Like, for example, when I was studying finance information, in the earlier stages, I thought it was a lot. I'm like, wow, how am I going to learn all these things? But then I realized that it's really step by step. Step by step by step by step by step. And over the years, my financial literacy improved. And it got to such a level where people ask me about it, and I say, look, I'm not a financial planner. I recommend talking with a financial advisor or financial planner for that kind of advice. I'm not technically licensed to talk about particular things, which I don't. Dish out advice. I recommend talking with someone. But it's amazing through the amount of books, ChatGPT, videos that are available, blogs, step by step by step, how proficient you can get with your finances. And I'm still learning, and I'm still growing, and I have fun with it. Why do I have fun with it? Because I have a harmonious relationship with money then. So I can honestly say, I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning. Think and Grow Rich changed my life in many ways, but in this sense, I had a hard time with money. I did not have a harmonious relationship with money in an ideal way. My style, which is the best style, which is what I live now. I have a definite chief aim. I commit to having X amount of dollars in my bank account, and I made that the priority. That has been really helpful. I made that the priority. I prioritized the definite chief aim, and everything else was secondary to the definite chief aim. And, somehow it's related to the definite chief aim. But I wasn't worried about those things. And what happened was, not only did I get out of debt, I had the $25,000 in my bank account, I bought my first house, but I also had acquired a higher degree of financial literacy. I got into finance spreadsheets, I got into budgeting, And again, if I say those kind of words, a person may be triggered. If you release identification to whatever conditioning is triggering, you'll see that those words aren't bad words. And that's your style of doing it. It doesn't mean you have to be cheap. I certainly don't live like that. It means harmonious relationship with numbers, with money. And it doesn't mean you got to do all the numbers in your business. As mentioned, you can have an accountant, you can have a chief financial officer, you can have someone on your team that does it, many kind of configurations. Those kinds of configurations naturally emerge when you have a harmonious relationship with money. Otherwise, it's just conditioning playing out as theater to reflect that conditioning. Is that what you want? Or do you want your real self to shine forth as all these wonderful things? Practically speaking, it means living your ideal life. Harmonious relationship with money. And it could be crypto, it could be any kind of monetary instrument. And then, over the years, I talk about all these kinds of nuances. All these different things that happened along the way, I talked about it based on personal experience. And I shared it with people, and they applied these things, and it was helpful for them. And then what I discovered was more ways that I have not applied, but other people apply on how they go about their finances, how they go about their business, etc. And they succeed tremendously. And I'm curious. I'm open to it. I'm not closed off. I'm not saying my way is the best way, their way is not the best way, because that will just close off the mind. Consider this. The limiting beliefs in mind distort reality. By that it is meant, it generates this attention not revealing what is in front of us right now that's actually helpful for us. Like, for example, what's articulated in the wonderful book, Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. We are right now standing on our own acres of diamonds. Those limiting beliefs in the subconscious mind can distort our view of reality. And it can close us off, and unknowingly, to information that's actually helpful for us, that actually works. So I stay open, and the way to stay open is dissolve the conditioning that generates this closing off kind of way of thinking, emotionally relating behaviors, etc. Dissolve that conditioning. And people share with me. I come across all kinds of videos, people share with me, clients share with me. I learn from everyone. My clients, the student and teacher, are one to me. The student is a teacher and the teacher is a student. The coach is the client, the consultant is the client, and the client is the coach, and the client is the consultant. I learn from them, they learn from me. It's an exploratory conversation. That way we have clear thinking there, and it's not based on bias. And I learn a lot of things. So sometimes I'll share what I have seen, and sometimes I'll share what I have done. And that's one of the beautiful aspects of staying committed to your vision for the long term. You gain mastery, and you're able to see things from so many different perspectives that your answer is, it depends. Not to confuse people, but to actually bring clarity. Someone says, should I do this in my business? Should I do that? Should I handle my finances this way? Should I handle my finances that way? Whatever. The answer is depends. Should I buy this car? Should I not buy this car? The answer is depends. Should I lease it? Should I not lease it? The answer is depends. Let's look at the other variables at play. Let's look at whatever else at play, and let's have a conversation about it. We'll have an exploratory conversation. You can really think for yourself, and you'll find a way that is natural. And if I see something that I have seen before, that is something worth keeping into consideration, not to discourage you, but to keep into consideration, I'll share it. Because sometimes what I've seen in consulting is clients do come up with their own ideas. And then I say, okay, some of the things I've seen when these kinds of idea or this exact kind of idea has been moved forward with is X, Y, Z, whether it be helpful or not. And they're like, thank you for that. And based on experience, that knowledge, what happens then is they can maybe pivot or adjust a little bit, or that's helpful if they start to see signs of one of those things playing out, they can pivot and adjust accordingly. And that's why it's helpful to have a mastermind group, a coach, or consultant That is coaching, consulting, or masterminding, or the mastermind group has people in there who have diverse array of experiences, and we all do. And it's facilitated in a way that brings out the best of people. And the coaching and consulting is not just based on beliefs, not just based on skill, but both at the same time. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. I got another 57 minutes on my drive. I'm going to just relax and drive. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. We'll talk soon. Take care.